Hi everyone and welcome back to Retro Legends. When we think about the most famous video games of all time, it's impossible not to think of Super Mario, Zelda, Donkey Kong. But behind these amazing games, there's one name: Shigeru Miyamoto. People call him the Walt Disney of video games. Miyamoto totally changed how we play, explore, and feel when we're looking at a screen. But how much do you really know about this super creative guy? In this video, we're going to look at 10 surprising facts, things you might not know, and cool behind-the-scenes stories about the life and work of one of the most important people in entertainment history. Get comfortable. You're about to find out a hidden side of Mario's dad that you've probably never seen before. Let's start. It might sound hard to believe, but Shigeru Miyamoto didn't grow up dreaming of becoming a game designer. When he was young, he really loved drawing, painting, and Japanese comics, especially the works of Osamu Tezuka, who he thought was a big inspiration. His dream was to become a manga artist or a professional illustrator, and that's why he went to the Kanazawa Municipal College of Industrial Arts, where he studied industrial design. However, after he finished school, he had a hard time finding a job in a creative field. It was his dad who suggested he apply at Nintendo, which back then wasn't famous for video games yet but made toys and playing cards. Thanks to a lucky meeting with the president, Hiroshi Yamauchi, who was impressed by his ideas and his artistic talent, Miyamoto was hired in 1977 as an artist and designer. From that moment on, he started an amazing journey that would turn him from someone who wanted to be an illustrator into one of the most important people in the history of digital entertainment. In 1981, Nintendo was in a really tough spot in the American market. The company had put a lot of money into making and shipping Radar Scope, an arcade shooter game that did pretty well in Japan, but it turned out to be a total flop in North America. Hundreds of game machines were left unsold, and Nintendo's American branch was about to go out of business. To save their investment, the president, Hiroshi Yamauchi, asked Shigeru Miyamoto, who was a young designer nobody really knew back then, to find a way to change those unused game machines into something new that could make money. Miyamoto, in his first big job as a game designer, came up with an idea based on the classic love triangle between Popeye, Olive Oyl, and Bluto. The game would have Popeye climbing platforms to save Olive Oyl from Bluto. But Nintendo couldn't get the rights to the famous American comic strip in time, so Miyamoto had to create his own characters. And so, Jumpman was born, a simple carpenter with a simple and easy-to-see design, who would later become Mario, Pauline, the girl who needed saving, and a wild ape who threw barrels, Donkey Kong. The name Donkey Kong itself came from a funny mistake in translation and wanting to suggest the idea of a stubborn ape. Even though some people weren't sure at first, the game was a huge hit. Donkey Kong became one of the biggest arcade hits of the 1980s. It saved Nintendo's American division, it launched Miyamoto's career, and it introduced the world to the character who would become the biggest video game icon ever, Mario. This moment was one of the most important turning points in video game history. Mario's character came from a clever mix of tech limits, things from culture, and creative ideas. His special look, red hat, blue overalls, big black mustache, wasn't because of some fancy design plan. It was more like a bunch of handy fixes to get around the tough hardware limits of the early 1980s. The mustache, for example, was added to make the mouth show up on a face made of just a few tiny dots, and the hat was there to avoid having to make the hair move when he jumped. The overalls, on the other hand, made his arm and leg movements easier to see. This made the action clearer, even on screens that weren't very sharp. The name Mario came later. It was inspired by Mario Segale, an Italian-American businessman who owned the building where Nintendo of America had its offices. According to some folks who worked there at the time, Segale had burst into the office demanding the back rent be paid, making such an impression that the team decided to rename Jumpman after him. This colorful story adds another layer to the legend of how one of the most famous characters in video game history was born. Over time, Mario became more than just the main character. He became the very face of Nintendo, showing the spirit of adventure, creativity, and fun for everyone that Nintendo is all about. Shigeru Miyamoto has said many times that his idea for The Legend of Zelda came from his own special memories from when he was young. When he was a boy, Miyamoto spent whole afternoons exploring the woods, hills, and caves near his home in Sonobe, a country town close to Kyoto. Every hidden spot, every path that just popped up in the woods was like a special adventure for him, a little secret to figure out. It was that feeling of wonder and finding new things, a real, exciting feeling like exploring without a map, that he wanted to put into The Legend of Zelda. Other games back then made you follow a straight path, but Zelda gave players a big, open world to explore, full of secrets, hidden paths, and you could do things your own way. Miyamoto wanted players to feel like real explorers. He wanted them to feel that same excitement he had as a kid, going into a dark cave with a flashlight for the first time, not knowing what was inside. He also chose not to give many instructions at the start. Players had to use their own curiosity and smarts to figure out what to do next. This totally new idea didn't just change what adventure games were like, it also helped start the whole idea of open-world games. So, The Legend of Zelda isn't just a game, it's like a piece of Miyamoto's own childhood. His way of sharing that amazing feeling of exploring freely, with no rules, with millions of people. Back then, video games were mostly just arcade games, quick, all about getting high scores and you'd play them over and over. Shigeru Miyamoto brought in a really big change, using how you play the game to tell a story. His idea was about more than just making a tough game or something for quick fun. He believed a video game could tell a story, make you feel things, and build cool, big worlds without needing lots of text, talking, or long opening scenes. For him, the story should just naturally come out from how the player and the game world work together. In The Legend of Zelda, for instance, every cave, item, or bad guy means something and gives you clues about the world you're exploring. There's no voice telling you what your mission is. The feeling of adventure comes from discovering things, taking chances, and being amazed. In Super Mario Bros., when you go through all the different looking levels, it builds up the excitement like a story with no words, all leading to the final fight with Bowser. Even with Metroid, which Miyamoto didn't make himself, but his team's ideas were definitely in it, the story comes from the kind of scary feeling, the quiet moments, and how the world slowly changes, more than from words on the screen. This way of making games, which we now think is a super important part of game design, was totally new and mind-blowing back in the 80s. Back when stories in video games were often just a little bit in the instruction book or on the first screen, Miyamoto showed you could tell a story by things in the game. Shigeru Miyamoto always had a very clear idea about sequels, not just as a way to make more money from a hit game, but as a chance to try new things, be creative, and surprise people. Unlike many other game makers back then, and even today, Miyamoto never thought that just doing more of the same was a good plan. For him, every new game in a series had to be a step forward, a fresh start for new ideas. It's no surprise that Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, the Japanese version of the second game, even though it was well made, was criticized by Miyamoto himself and his team. They said it was too much like the first game, just harder, without adding anything really new. From then on, every sequel Miyamoto worked on became like a real science lab for trying out new things. Super Mario Bros. 3 brought in the world map, special costumes, and a story that was put together in a more detailed way. Super Mario World really used all the power of the Super Nintendo, bringing us Yoshi and game levels that had more layers. But it was with Super Mario 64 that Miyamoto changed all the rules. Moving to 3D was a huge deal, not just for the Mario games but for all video games. Using a free camera, 3D movement, and a game you didn't have to play in a straight line, that set a new standard. And he didn't stop there. With Super Mario Sunshine, he brought in a lively and connected world, with a strong Mediterranean look and feel, and a new tool, Flood, that totally changed how you played with the world around you. Finally, with Super Mario Galaxy, Miyamoto and his team took things to a whole new level, almost like an idea. They played with gravity, how you see things and how planets work, to give players something totally fresh. So every game Miyamoto made stands out because he was willing to take chances, even if it meant some people might not like it. There's no set recipe. There's only curiosity, wanting to explore new ideas, and the belief that video games should always surprise you, change things up, and go further. Even though he's super famous and a really important person at Nintendo, Shigeru Miyamoto has always stayed surprisingly humble and very hands-on. Unlike a lot of big names in the video game world, who often move into manager jobs once they get to a certain point, Miyamoto has turned down promotions many times that would have pulled him away from the actual day-to-day work of creating games. For him, the real heart of the job is being right there with the ideas and the first versions of games, actually the games in the most direct way. He said many times that he doesn't feel right just sitting at a desk, managing money or company plans. His real passion is still trying out how games feel, talking with the designers, suggesting changes and testing things over and over. Even when he could have just taken on a more formal role, like being on the board of directors or a top manager, he chose to keep getting his hands dirty right there in the game development rooms. It's this way of thinking that has really helped Nintendo keep making such high-quality and original games. Today, even though his role is more about giving advice, Miyamoto is still very much involved in looking over new games. He doesn't just tell people what to do from the top. Instead, he works right alongside the young developers, offering tips, listening to their ideas, and helping the team get their creative ideas flowing. He's known for being curious and getting straight to the point. He'll often grab a controller, play for hours, take notes, and suggest small changes that might not seem like a big deal. But they make the game so much better for everyone who plays it. This way of working together has made Nintendo a place where people learn and grow, and where new ideas are always popping up. A place where even the newest team members can share their thoughts with one of the smartest people in the whole video game world. Shigeru Miyamoto isn't just a master of game design, he also really loves music. He plays the guitar, the banjo, and other stringed instruments. This love for music has really shaped the art and sound in his games. Right from his first projects, Miyamoto showed he was really interested in the music part of his games. He knew that a good soundtrack was super important for creating the right feel, rhythm, and personality for a video game. He didn't just hand off the music work to the composers. Instead, he was often part of making the big decisions, working super closely with Koji Kondo, the amazing guy who wrote the music for Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda. Miyamoto had one really important rule. The music had to be simple, catchy, and easy to recognize, but never, ever boring. The idea was that every tune should stick in the player's head and become a really important part of the game experience. This way of doing things led to some super famous game songs that can instantly bring back pictures and memories even after many, many years. For example, with the Super Mario theme song, Miyamoto asked for music that would perfectly match the rhythm of Mario's jumps, almost like a perfectly timed dance between what you do in the game and the music you hear. For The Legend of Zelda, on the other hand, he helped steer the music to be more grand and mysterious, something that would fit with all the exploring and that feeling of wonder. Miyamoto didn't write the musical notes himself, but he would describe the feelings, the places, and the moods the songs needed to create, leaving it up to the musicians to turn those ideas into actual music. Also, for games like Donkey Kong Country 2 and Yoshi's Island, even though he wasn't directly making the music, he shared some really important thoughts and ideas that really shaped how the music turned out in the end. You can also see his love for music in the way he designed games where rhythm and sound are a super important part of the fun. Like Wii Music or Donkey Konga. These were two games that tried out new ideas, and even though people had mixed feelings about them, they really show how Miyamoto always wants to mix fun, new ideas, and ways to play together in exciting new ways. So when you get right down to it, the music in Miyamoto's games is never just something playing in the background. Instead, it's a living, important part of the game, planned right from the start to connect with every jump, every new discovery, and every feeling the player has. One of his biggest fears when making games is players wasting their time. That's why he always pushed his teams to make every moment of gameplay count. No useless tutorials, controls that work right away, and design that's easy to get. The game has to be fun in the first 30 seconds, that's one of his most famous sayings. Miyamoto is known for being a kind but firm leader. He doesn't shout, he doesn't boss people around, he leads by example, and with excitement. This way of thinking has shaped Nintendo and has inspired lots of game designers all over the world. From Fumito Ueda to Hideo Kojima, many of them say he's one of the biggest influences on their work. And that wraps up our trip to the past. How many of these fun facts did you already know? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more trips into the world of retro gaming. Thanks for watching Retro Legends, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay retro, stay legends!